tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good morning, everyone. So today we are going to continue with our lecture on Chittaja Rūpas. At the moment we are talking about some special aspect of Chittaja Rūpas. We talked how Chittaja Rūpas are involved in maintaining the postures, how they facilitate voluntary activities, and how they are involved in instinctive activities and also actions done due to habits, and most importantly due to vasana as well. Then we talked about, in the previous week, we talked about how the actions are performed through psychic powers. Today we are moving into a new context, how actions are done during the sleep. So today's lecture I am going to dedicate it entirely to explain what sleep is according to Theravada teachings. I was unable to give a handout, sorry for that, because due to my schedule, and we'll try to figure out what sleep is. So next day we can talk about how activities are done during the sleep. So according to Theravada teachings, some of you who have studied the Dhamma must have heard that during sleep, the chittas, the consciousness that arises during sleep is called bhavanga chitta. That is the consciousness which cognizes the object that was taken prior to death in the previous life. When every being is going to die, if the person has not fully eradicated defilements, and also if the person is not dying from the asanya satta, unless these occasions, everyone sees a certain object close to death. It could be any karma that the person has done in that life or in a past life, or any instrument object that was instrumental or that was necessary to perform the action, the karma, or an object related to the destination or the new life one is going to be born. These are the close death signs that any being would encounter before death if a being has not eradicated defilements entirely. Even an anagami would get one of them, but if someone is dying from the asanya satta, there will be no close death object encountering, because there is no consciousness in that life. Then the first chitta of the following life, which is called the patisandhi chitta, the rebirth linking consciousness, take the same object that was taken proximity to the death in the previous life. There are few exceptional cases that this law can change. I'm not going to touch upon that. Then the object of the patisandhi chitta will be the object of the subsequent consciousnesses that are going to arise. Subsequent consciousnesses are called the bhavanga chittas, that would follow or proceed the rebirth linking consciousness. So these chittas are called the life continuum. Actually, it is one single chitta that is recurring throughout the entire life. That same chitta, it's called the main chitta in one's life. That chitta, when it arises for the first time in a life, we call it patisandhi. Then when it reoccurs, we call it bhavanga chitta. When it arises for the last time, as the final consciousness of the life, we call it the chuti chitta. But in terms of realities, patisandhi, bhavanga, chuti are the same consciousness, or we can call similar consciousness, that is arising due to the same karma. So that is the consciousness that governs most of the features in one's lives. The intellect, their characteristics, all are governed by the nature of this patisandhi chitta or bhavanga chitta we may call it. And the English translation is, most scholars render it in English as the life continuum. The life continuum. Then we know that in Abhidhamma it is taught that while someone is not taking any specific object, any new object that has struck to any of the doors, the being's mind remains in the bhavanga stream, the stream of life continuum. That stream would continue as long as someone is not taking a new object. The object of the life continuum is the object taken to the proximity of the death in the previous life. So then while sleeping as well, we normally generally say that the being is in the bhavanga stream for a longer period. Then we have to analyze what is this? What is in terms, how do we specifically analyze or define sleep according to the Theravada teachings? Scientifically, there are various interpretations. There's a different way of interpreting the sleep, but it's somewhat similar within the Theravada teachings as well. Because both the traditions in science and also within the Theravada tradition, we mostly emphasize upon the body while we are asleep. So the gist of this message is, during sleep, some other consciousnesses other than the bhavanga chitta may arise in a living being. But the being is still considered as sleeping due to a certain change that has happened within the physical body. So normally beings fall into sleep due to a physical inability or physical reason. Then the obvious question that comes is, do arupa beings sleep? It seems like they do not. I'm not aware of how the Brahmas do. Seems like they must fall into a sleep. Obviously the Devas fall into sleep. Then now we move into understand what are the consciousness. So how do we define consciousness in terms of the entire day-to-day activities? Now, this is another way of defining it. Consciousness can perform various functions. We learn 14 functions done by various types of consciousnesses. We talked this in the Kicca Sangha. We haven't done it in these lectures, but in future we will be doing it. Ones who have touched upon Abhidhamma would know there are 14 functions performed by consciousness. And these functions can also be interpreted in different ways. Various functions we can. Now, for instance, taking an object, knowing an object, collectively knowing an object. This is not incorporated in the 14 functions. That is the main function of a mental cluster. And performing verbal, physical, mental activities, which are incorporated in the Javana Chittas, but we can call them as various functions. In the same way, we see some other functions performed by the consciousness, or we can say, while the mind is doing certain activities, what type of chittas are involved or arising at that moment. So we can look this into as functions of the consciousness, or either functions or states where the being is in, and what type of consciousnesses are arising during those states. So therefore, first we will try to analyze the chittas, consciousnesses in various moments. So here we are going to classify it into 6 groups, 6 types of consciousnesses. First is Niddha Bhavanga Sit. Niddha. The Pali word for sleep is Niddha. It can also be called Nindra, Nidra, Nidra. When it comes to Pali, DR assimilates to D and becomes Nidda, Nidda, long A. Nidda or Nidra. Nidra. In Sanskrit it's Nidra. Nidda Bhavanga Sit. Bhavanga Chitta. Nidda Bhavanga Chittas. Then another group is Niddha Viti Chittas. Niddha Viti Chitta. Then you have another type of consciousness, Muccha. Muccha Bhavanga Chitta. Niddha is sleep. Muccha is while one is unconscious, the state of being unconscious. That's called muccha. In Sanskrit we will call murcha. Then muccha viti chittas. I've taken all this with the references actually. They have referential base actually. These are not inventions of myself, done by myself. All these have references. Then we have Jagarana Chittas. Jagarana. Jagarana Chittas. So Jagarana Chittas are always Viti Chittas. Right? Then Jagarana Bhavanga Chittas. Jagarana Bhavanga Chittas, or we can call it, I would like to name it because it may seem a little bit contradicting, so we can say Antar Jagarana Chitta. That's a much better word. Antara Jagarana Chitta. Antara means in between. Jagarana Chitta. Jagarana means being awake while we are consciously aware of what is happening around us. Jagarana. So during Jagarana Chittas are always Viti Chittas. Viti Chittas are the consciousness that we normally perform our activities. The ones who have not done this, but we have talked about this in various occasions, so I assume that the ones who are joining would know this actually. Now when the Viti processes are happening, for instance, when consciousness, Manodvara, Vajjana, Javana Chittas continue to arise for 7 times, then it will be followed by Bhavanga Chittas. 2 mind processes. In between 2 mind processes, we get Bhavanga Chittas. So white color the mind processes. So every mind process is preceded by Bhavanga Chittas. These Bhavanga Chittas is the consciousness that arose for the first time in the life. This is the consciousness that is produced by the karma that produced the life actually. So while we are awake now, this is the difference. Now these chittas are called Viti Chittas. These in between chittas are called Bhavanga Chittas. Bhavanga. This same chitta arises for the first time in one's life, and that's the same chitta that arises as the last consciousness in one's life. And in between every mind stream, mind process, these Bhavanga Chittas will recur. And if the mind stream is occupied continuously by the Bhavanga Chittas for a prolonged period, we say the being has fallen into sleep or into an unconscious state. It can be either. So these with Bhavanga Chittas, we do not perform any active activity. And these consciousness, now these are the consciousness with which we perform activities and we are alive. The others feel that we are alive and we ourselves feel that we are alive. Alive means we are active and involved in taking objects and doing physical, verbal, mental activities. But always the consciousness arises in pockets of consciousnesses, certain processes. Every process has a beginning and an end. And between every 2 processes, there is a buffer. That buffer is the Bhavanga consciousness produced by the karma that gave the life. And then this consciousness is said to be maintained in the life without letting it to terminate or to break or to vanish or to disappear. So this function of these Bhavanga Chittas is to maintain the life that is produced by one karma. Actually the main source is the karma. Karma is produced in the life, but the entire life is maintained by this consciousness. So in the final conclusion, if someone asks who maintains the life, it is the karma. As long as the karma energy is there, the life would continue. And karma would do that by producing a certain consciousness. And that consciousness is ingrained with all the qualities of the karma which produced it. And the conditions around the karma when it was performed are also affecting this consciousness. So the person's characteristics are mainly determined in one life is by this according to the nature of this Bhavanga Chitta. A person who may manifest certain attributes, characteristics in one life would completely change or can see contrasting or drastic differences in another life when a different karma produces the life. So that's why even this preacher who is teaching this Dhamma, if I was born again with a different karma or a weak karma that is not facilitating the wisdom, even I myself would not be able to understand looking into the videos that I did in YouTube, for example. If I happen to be born in the human realm again and with a different karma which doesn't facilitate the understanding of these teachings, so I may happen to watch my videos again. I will not be knowing that this is I myself in the past life, and I may not be able to understand this deep Dhamma because my mind would not facilitate that understanding. It's obvious if I am born as an animal being, surely I will not be able to understand any of this stuff, not even the basic elements. So therefore the karma which brings the life, the new life, determines most of the parts, most of the characteristics of one life, but it's not the only karma. There are some other karmas affecting. We'll talk about this huge dynamic process and vast process in a holistic way when we come to the lessons of karma. But for the time being, we should keep in mind the Patisandhi karma, the karma which gave the rebirth, plays a huge role in one's life, because the bhavanga, a consciousness that is produced by that same karma is happening throughout the entire life whenever there is no active consciousness involved. When there is no active consciousness involved. And those consciousness, those bhavanga chittas are highly influential to the nature of these consciousness, because these consciousnesses are coming out of, it's like they are coming out of this bhavanga stream. If the bhavanga is very weak, these consciousnesses have a limited capacity. That's why an animal who is born with a weak bhavanga due to a weak karma is unable to attain jhanas, maggapalas, regardless how much the being puts effort. Right? So this is the difference between bhavanga chittas and vichi chittas. First we need to know about this. Now when nidda bhavanga chitta means while asleep, bhavanga chittas keeps on happening. So especially while we are in deep sleep, these bhavanga chittas keeps on happening. The being is not aware of what is happening. Another very important feature of bhavanga chitta is the being, the person or the consciousness is not aware of what is happening. Is not prominent. What is happening is not prominent. If someone asks the question, is bhavanga chitta aware of something? Yes, obviously it is aware of something. But it doesn't become an object for metacognition. Metacognition means we are able to think about our own thinking later on. For instance, if I did something wrong or something bad, I am able to analyze this incident again and comes into regret or to correct my faults or to improve if it was a good thing, I can improve myself. And also I would be, if I for instance, if I was able to understand a certain theory, and if I am to explain this to another group of students, metacognition is very important, because I am able to analyze what were the components that were required for me to gain this understanding. Then I'll be able to constitute or to condition the other person's life, or bring the conditions that were required for me to understand, to come into that understanding. So what type of mindset I had, what type of faith I had, what type of effort was required. So if the person is lacking, what the person is lacking, all this analysis is possible when we have metacognition. Metacognition is analyzing your own mind. So activities that were done previously are the objects of metacognition. And the topic of metacognition is very vast, and the person is able to bring forth solutions looking into his own experience. But when it comes to bhavanga chittas, it is said that bhavanga chittas do not become an object of metacognition. It means a person is unable to recall his dream and remember, a person is unable to recall his sleeping state and to recall or analyze what was happening at that time. But on that specific moment, while the bhavanga chitta is arising, the bhavanga chitta is aware of the object itself. It is aware of the object itself, but the person is unable to recall what was happening, because the reason given is the chitta itself, the bhavanga chitta itself is very subtle. So if the bhavanga chittas happen to arise for a longer period, the person is said to be in the sleeping state. The person is said to be in the sleeping. So that's why it's called the Nidda Bhavanga Chittas. Nidda Vichiti Chittas means while the person is at sleep, sometimes the Viti Chittas, these mind processes may arise. The best example is while we are seeing dreams, while we are dreaming, certain consciousness are happening because we see mostly an unreal object or a weird object or an untrue object. Some dreams are true, actually they give some signs. So some people have experienced, especially I myself have experienced lots of dreams that were signs of the future that became true. I'm not confirming that those things were actually what was, I saw them, but they have become true in many occasions. I myself have lots of experiences on this. So, and some people do experience certain dreams. It is said in the literature that Bodhisattva especially saw such dreams about his enlightenment and so forth. And some dreams are influenced by non-humans, and some dreams are entirely weird due to the imbalance of elements in the body, and also some dreams are due to the influence of the objects that were regularly taken in our day-to-day life. There are 4 ways that dreams could happen according to Theravada teachings. So while dreaming, Viti Chittas, the processes happen, but still the person is at sleep. Person is at sleep. And a similar process happens during the muchas while someone is unconscious. Bhavanga Chittas happen, and also on certain occasions Viti Chittas happen. The book says that at that moment the Vitis are quite shorter. The Javana Chittas are lesser than 7 while the person is at in an unconscious level. The difference between the unconscious level and the sleeping level, while we are at sleep, someone could eventually wake us up, wake up us at any time. Wake us up at any time. But while someone is in an unconscious state, it's not guaranteed the person would be able to, one would be able to wake the person up. So there's a huge difference between while we are sleeping and while someone is unconscious. But technically speaking, Bhavanga Chittas are mostly happening during an unconscious period, but the body and the mind is in a different state than that while he was in the sleeping state. And also it is said in the books that while in the unconscious state, even the Javana process is lessened for 5-6 consciousnesses, because the body is highly in a distressed level. It's not in an active or a proper good state. Then the Jagarana Vitichi. Jagarana Chittas are the consciousness that arises while we are awake. For example, while we are doing our activities. Now, for instance, while you are listening, you are in a Jagarana state. While I am teaching, I am in a Jagarana state. While we are eating and doing day-to-day activities, especially during the daytime, while we are not taking a nap, always the consciousness is active. So, at that time, Viti Chittas are happening. In the sleeping state, the priority goes to the Bhavanga Chittas. In the unconscious state, the priority goes to the Bhavanga Chittas. At that time, the Bhavanga is dominating. It's the Bhavanga that is happening, and the Viti Chittas are happening time to time in certain intervals. But during the Jagarana's period, Viti Chittas are prominent. Those are the Chittas that are happening all the time. But Antar-Jagarana Chitta are, these are the Jagarana Chittas, these are the Viti Chittas. But between Viti Chittas, there is always a buffer Bhavanga. Bhavangas are happening in between. So these Bhavangas are slightly different from these Bhavanga, because if you talk about the activeness of the Bhavanga Chittas, while in deep sleep or while at sleep and while we are awake, they are completely different. Because at this moment, as Paramattha Dipani states, Bhavanga Chittas are always in constant search of new objects. It's always in constant search. The Manasikara Chetasika in these Bhavanga Chittas are very active. So it's constantly searching. Now think about when in our phones we active our Wi-Fi and there's no Wi-Fi, for instance. There's no Wi-Fi around, but we have activated it. Now what happens is every few seconds when the Wi-Fi is on, it is in search of some Wi-Fi connection. It searches and then it stops. It searches and then it stops. So, but still it has not got any Wi-Fi to entangle with or to connect with. So likewise, in the Bhavanga Chitta has the previous object of the previous life, but it's always active to find out a new object. So when the activeness has, so therefore as a result, due to this activeness, after an object strikes with it and the Viti Chitta starts to arise. Bhavanga Chitta is not aware of the new object. It is the process that takes us to the new object. Why is that? It's Manasikara, there's a Chetasika that governs the function of this Bhavanga. And it is been influenced by various reasons. While we are active, the body is active. So when the body is active, the mind doesn't stop. So the biggest role is played by the body. Why someone falls into sleep according to Theravada teaching? According to Vajrabuddhi sub-commentary, the body becomes pacified. It's not done by someone, it gets pacified. Like it calms down. It loses its energy. It loses its activeness. So according to science even, that's what is happening. It's a physical, chemical process that subdues the activeness of the body. So then eventually we fall into sleep. So likewise, according to Theravada teachings, the body gets into that state. And it can happen to Arahants as well, because the fatigue is something physical. It is felt to the mind, but the fatigue is something found in the physical body. So it needs a biological process to get renewed or to refresh itself. So when the fatigue is there, automatically the mind goes into that calm state. The body goes into that calm state. When the body goes into that state, eventually the mind also falls into a specified state that eventually it falls into the Bhavanga stream. So while we are awake, the body is very active, and as a result the mind is active. It's always constantly going into the Viti Chitta. So that's why when we are awake, it's not possible for us to stop thinking. Always constantly the mind will be getting a new object, or at least we think we are not thinking about anything specific thing, or we are not aware what is happening in our mind sometimes, or otherwise we are in a meditative state. So always it's active, it knows what is happening. The person has a certain control over what to think and what not to think, and all the rules laid down by the Buddha are applicable for monks while these Jagarana Tittas are happening. When someone is at sleep or when someone is unconscious, none of the rules are applicable. None of the rules are applicable. Few are there. For example, sleeping under the same roof with a female, or there are some other rules that are applicable, but all the rules that we breach intentionally are applicable only while the Jagarana Chittas are present. Right? So that these are the 6 types of group Chittas that we can divide while during our day-to-day life. We are either awake, even while we are awake, in between the Vichitittas, Bhavangas are happening, or otherwise we are at sleep, deep sleep, or while sleeping, still Vichitittas are happening, and sometimes, very rarely, one may fall into an unconscious state, and then even at that time, Vichitittas and Bhavanga Chittas are happening. Mostly the Bhavanga Chittas would dominate that process, dominate that state. Then what is sleep according to Theravada teachings? Sleep is the inactive state, or the state of where the body is tranquil, highly tranquil, and is not active. So at that moment, during this process, during this time, the person's body becomes weaker and it is unable to maintain the postures. Unable to maintain the postures. So the entire body collapses. Collapses means it loses its capacity to perform certain activities. So the entire body loses its active nature. Active nature. In Pali we call, when this happens, the body has come into the state of nirutsaha. Nirutsaha. Santa. Nirutsaha means it doesn't have any urge, activeness. Santa is at peace. It's very calmed down. So that's the state of sleep. Now, at this level, there are exceptional cases are there. But in most of the time, the body has come into a very deep, very passive state. Body has come into a passive state. So what is happening in the mind at that time? Mostly the bhavanga chitta is happening. Mostly the bhavanga chitta is happening. But sometimes viti chittas may arise. Viti chittas may arise. So, and then again the bhavanga falls back. But mostly bhavanga chittas. But occasionally viti chittas may arise. If I draw it in colors, the bhavanga is happening most of the time. Viti chittas in between happens. But mostly it's the bhavanga. Mostly the bhavanga. Then, now what are these consciousnesses that are happening in between the bhavanga chittas? They are viti chittas. But still, the entire body is at the state of nirutsaha and santa, inactive state. It's in a calm state. It's different from the state while we are in a meditative concentration. It's different. So here, things are out of our control. Another very important factor is out of control. We cannot have mindfulness or awareness, or we cannot guarantee what would happen, what we are doing. It seems like things are happening out of our control. Another very important aspect, inactive, calm state, at the same time, avisaya state. Avisaya is not within our domain of control. So at this moment, whether the bhavanga chittas arises, viti chittas arises, still the being is considered to be sleeping. Being is considered to be sleeping. Then Milinda Panya says when someone falls into this state, there are three occasions of this state, of the sleep. That is the beginning, then the middle state, and the third state, we can call the deep state. As it's said in Milinda Panya, the first stage is when we become drowsy. According to science, we have the rapid eye movement and all these different stages. As my memory was correct, there are 4 stages of sleep. There is a state that we see dreams, and there is a stage that we go into deep sleep, dreamless sleep, and so forth. So in Milinda Panya, we see 3 stages. The drowsy state. Drowsy state is now this person's head falls down and his eyes starts to shut down, and he feels like he's going into a certain state, and most of the time we will not remember that afterwards. We don't remember when we fell into a sleep. But suddenly, sometimes we wake up during this process and we feel it very difficult, like we were almost going into a sleeping state, and between that we were waken up. So that is the first stage of the sleep. It's called Mula of the Nidda, the first stage. Then the middle stage is called now the dreaming stage, dreaming. Then we start to see various objects in between. While we are getting drowsy, and suddenly the mind starts to see various objects. If the person has not restrained, controlled his mind well during the daytime, lots of various dreams the person starts to experience. That's the middle of the dream, it's sleep, they say. Then we go to the deep state. There's the deep bhavanga state. That is the actual deep sleep. At this moment, no Viti Chitta is happening. During the drowsy and the dreaming stage, even the Bhavanga is dominating. Time to time, the consciousness comes into the Viti stage. The person, Viti Chittas do arise during these three stages, during the first two stages. Then we come to the deep sleep. According to science, then we again go into a dreaming stage, again it goes into deep sleep. So there's sleep cycles. There are few sleep cycles going through when we are sleeping at night. So this keeps on happening again and again, right? These are the main three stages as explained in the Milinda Panya. This is not to say that the entire sleeping hours, for instance, if you sleep for 6 hours, 8 hours, this is not the entire process. This cycle keeps on repeating. The cycle keeps on repeating. Right, I'm not sure whether we come to the drowsy state again. So somehow, surely these two stages are repeating. Now this is the stages of sleep. These are the stages of sleep. So it shows that according to these explanations found in the Panya and found in the Vajrabuddha Tika and many other sources, it's not only Bhavanga Chittas are arising while we are sleeping. Viti Chittas do arise while we sleep. Then we find another, now these sleep, we can divide these Chittas that are arising while we are sleeping into few other categories. So at this moment, during this entire process, we get Bhavanga Chittas and Viti Chittas. So according to the previous chart, what we are focusing are these two, Bhavanga Chitta and Viti Chitta. Sleeping Bhavanga and Viti Chittas while we are at sleep. Right? So during this process. Then these Bhavanga Chittas are again twofold. So Bhavanga during deep sleep and Bhavanga during dreaming. What does it mean? Dreaming means we are seeing a new object. So obviously, definitely according to Theravada, Viti Chittas has to occur while we are dreaming. But it's also fundamental during the processes, during the Viti processes, whether we are awake or whether we are dreaming, during the Viti processes, Vitis have a limited lifespan. Bhavangas has to arise. It's a must. Bhavangas has to arise. But these Bhavangas duration would be longer than while we are awake. It may be longer BH Bhavanga during the processes, but still Bhavangas has to arise. And these Bhavangas are somewhat active than the deep sleep Bhavangas. Because deep sleep Bhavangas are not sensitive to the objects. They are not in search of new objects. That's why it remains as the Bhavanga for a certain period. But while we are dreaming, this Bhavanga is causing a new object to strike it, or it goes to a new object, and then it causes the arising of Viti Chittas. But this Bhavanga and the Bhavanga that is happening while we are awake, these Bhavangas are quite different. So while we are asleep even, there are two types of Bhavanga. Bhavanga in the deep sleep and Bhavanga which happens in between Viti processes of dreaming or while we are at sleep. Viti processes can happen. It's not necessary that always it could be dreaming. We can have some slight analysis on this, but for the time being, Viti Chittas do happen while we are asleep, and between these Viti Chittas, Bhavanga Chittas fall. And at the same time, while we are deep sleep, continuously Bhavanga is arising. Then, what happens is, then we focus, so these Viti Chittas are again threefold while we are sleeping. Viti Chittas are threefold. One is the dreaming while we dream. Then we get while we are working, it's a very special moment, working. This is our topic. This is what I will be talking next week. While we are doing activities, while we are acting, then 5 sense door processes. 5 sense door processes. While we are dreaming, the mind door is working. We may most of the time, we will be seeing an object that is not real, and sometimes weird objects may be encountered. That is possible. Right? That is very weird. So, what type of objects that are coming, we will talk about them later. In brief explanation, some objects are due to encountering or knowing them or thinking about them constantly throughout the awakened time, and some objects are due to the imbalances of elements in one's body. Some objects are influenced or brought to our mind by non-humans, and very rarely some people may encounter certain objects that are about like indicators of the future, what is going to happen. Very rarely that is also possible. So there are 4 reasons how an object may be seen in a dream. Then while active, working, so sometimes we do behave, we do perform certain activities while we are at sleep. It's very special, famous example is sleepwalking. The person doesn't know what is happening. And in Vinaya, we find sometimes monks do emit semen with their physical activities, doing a physical effort while the person is at sleep. So emitting semen is a very grave offense for a monk if he does it while he is awake. If it is intentionally done, it leads to a very vigorous punishment. Punishment is not physical punishment, but which involves a lot of embarrassment. But if it happens while asleep, certain physical movements may happen within the monk. If the monk was not very restrained, certain things can happen, and certain dreams may arise in him. He may see certain dreams. We normally call wet dreams. So when the dreams happen, when he is dreaming, there is a very high possibility the monk may act physically in such occasions. So Buddha has said, even such thing happens, the monk is free from the offense. The reason is, it's out of his control. Avisayatta, it's out of his control. So that was the reason. Out of control. So while we are asleep, even physical activities happen. Since it is out of the control of the person, of the being, there are no offenses. So while if semen is emitted during sleep, there is no offense for the monk. But if he happens to wake up and if he comes into the controls, the state that he can have his control, then he should immediately stop his activities. Then he is responsible if he does it afterwards. Then sometimes while we are asleep, 5 sense doors may work. That's obvious now. For example, while we are asleep, sometimes when a mosquito bites, automatically we chase him away, even we are not aware of that. So why did we chase the bean away? Because we felt it to our body. It was felt with the 5 sense doors. That's why we took our arm and chased the mosquito away. So therefore, sometimes while we are asleep, these 5 sense door processes even happen. Reason is, all this time while dreaming, while doing certain activities, or speaking during the dream, while we are making loud noises, obviously these are physical verbal activities, and also while we feel certain senses to the 5 sense door, on all these occasions, even though the viti process is happening, the being is considered sleeping. Why? The reason is, body is in an inactive state. Body is in a calm state. And the person has no control over what is happening in his body and mind. So, therefore, it's a very interesting topic. Normally generally we say, while we are asleep, bhavanga chitta arises. But it's a general statement. It's true. It's correct to say that, because at that time, bhavanga is what is dominating. The actual state of sleep is due to a physical change that is happening in our body. the body becomes inactive and comes into a calm state, and that is a state in which we lose our control. So at that time, Bhavanga Chittas do arise. If the Bhavanga continuously arises for long period, we can call it the deep sleep. That's a good sleep. And then Viti Chittas do happen time to time. Even between every Viti Chittas, Bhavanga is happening. That Bhavanga is a little bit active than the Bhavanga in the deep sleep. Then during the Viti processes, few things can happen. Certain objects can be seen. That's we normally call the dreaming. Certain activities can happen. Some like speaking in the sleep, during sleep, or certain physical activities. And then we get 5 sense door processes as well. And also, we have to keep it in mind, there can be mind door processes, that is following the 5 sense door processes, which are not dreaming. So this list of Viti Chittas that are happening during the sleep, that list can be extended by saying some mind door processes which are not dreaming, which are not involved in activities, which are just mind door processes, can happen as a natural thing. But all the time, the mind, the person is out of he's not in control. So therefore, it is said the person is in sleep. So now, during this sleep, this is a very dynamic process happening at that time. Now, what is happening during this time while he is making physical activities in sleep? That will be our topic for the next week. How the mind is working, how the Chitta Rupas are produced, and what is the attitude of Buddha regarding such activities, how he has dealt with it in Vinaya. So that will be our topic. So I hope you got some better understanding about sleep, what is sleep according to Theravada teachings, and we'll try to extend our knowledge in the coming week by talking about the activities done during sleeping. So I'll conclude the lecture, giving the opportunity to ask questions.
Venerable Bhante, my first question is actually what you said about the Chitta Viti. First the 3 bhavangas you drew on the board, and then the Manodvara Vajjana, and thereafter the Javanas, especially in this Manodvara Viti. My question is, Chitta Viti begins with Bhavanga Chalana. At that moment, the particular object which is going to be the object for that Viti has already occurred. So, if essentially it has to be a material form, whether it is maybe Atita, that is the past one, or a future one, something like that. But it's a Manodvarika object. So it's a Dhamma. So at that moment, it is not taken as an object immediately by the Bhavanga Chitta. So if I take that as only Nissaya Pratyaya, but no Aramana Pratyaya. Thereafter, when it comes to Manodvara Vajjana, at that moment, the Aramana Pratyaya also takes place, and the Chitta will take the new object as an object. And when the Javan ends, and once again when it goes to Bhavanga, that Aramana Pratyaya finishes, and probably the Nissaya can continue. Whether it continues or not, the Bhavanga is occurring. So that is my first question. I have some more questions, but I will first leave it at that for you to give your comments.
First thing is, the object is not the object is occurring, object strikes at the Bhavanga.
Yes.
In the Manodvara Vitis, unless it's following a 5 sense door process, what happens is the mind goes to the object. It's not necessarily that it's a material form. It can be a consciousness, it can be a concept, it can be a present object, or it can be a past object, past material, whatever. The object range is very various, and it's not always Dhamma Ramana as well. It can be a Rūpa Ramana as also, because Sabbe Dhamma Mano Vijnana Dhatuya Aramana Pacchen Pachu. So yes, the bhavanga, when the bhavanga chalana, the object has struck or the mind has gone to the object. Normally it is said at this moment, it's not the object is striking at the bhavanga, it's the bhavanga that goes to the object. Then that connection is not under the nisaya paccaya. It's not a cause, because there is nothing happening at that time. Nothing arises at that time. That connection, when you are talking about a paccaya, it has to be either producing a new result, or either supporting a new reality, or it should be helping for the continuation of the lineage of something. We call janaka, upattambaka, anupalana. So this connection between object and the bhavanga has nothing to do with paccayas. But this connection, one can say, due to this connection, some vichittas are happening. So the connection, the contact itself is a cause for the chittas to arise. But otherwise, that contact has nothing to do with the 24 paccayas. Then yes.
Sorry, please continue.
So it has nothing to do with the 24 paccayas, because the contacting object with the bhavanga's contact with the object is not the arammana paccaya. It doesn't go into the scope of arammana paccaya, and it doesn't go into the scope of nisaya paccaya. Bhavanga chitta is supporting the viti chittas in terms of nisaya paccaya, not under the 24 paccayas of Abhidhamma, but in another way. It is a way of saying that. We can see that is mentioned in commentaries, but it is not included in the 24 paccayas. It is another way of explaining it. Then the mind-o processes gets the arammana paccaya from the object while it is taking. Then what happens? Now think about a person's two mind processes thinking about the same object. Then the buffer bhavanga. Bhavangas in between. Now if three mind processes think about the same object or the various aspects of the same object, then the bhavangas in between are constantly struck by this object. Constantly struck by this object. For example, when an object strikes at the ido, that object remains in the bhavanga for some time. So that's why it's the mind, five sense door process is followed by mind door processes. Yatha apata gata meva. As it was struck, it remains there. So it struck at the ido and it had a contact with the bhavanga stream immediately. Then the five sense door process happened. Then it will be followed by a mind door process. So in between there are bhavanga, and that same object has already occupied the mind. So the following bhavanga, there is no new striking. There is no new striking. So that same object is connected to the bhavanga, and then it produces vitichittas. Then still connected, it produces vitichittas. As long as the connection is there, it keeps on happening. So when two mind processes are taking the same object, the bhavangas in between are not restruck by the object unless it's a new object. So it's normally when the mind is it strikes at the entire mind stream. It's not striking at the bhavanga actually. It's striking at the entire mind stream. So if it happens to be a bhavanga at that time, then it continues like that. Sometimes there are occasions the object may strike while the javana is happening. That's what happens when someone wakes up from a jhana due to a loud sound. When the bhavanga jhana chittas are constantly happening, object strikes at the jhana chittas and it breaks the flow, and it is now connected to the bhavanga, the same object. Then the viti processes happen, taking that same object. So what happens is the mind is striking against the mind process. So what we explain in the viti chittas, when it happens to be a bhavanga chitta at that time, then bhavanga charana, bhavanga upachcheda, and the five sense door processes happen.
Actually, I asked this question because I was trying to understand the Maranasana Viti. It's a very strange Viti, because why I say strange is normal rules of Chitta Viti doesn't apply there. because after that 5 jhanas in that riti, probably there would be Tadaramana, or without Tadaramana it becomes Bhavanga, and thereafter the final Bhavanga is Chuti, and immediately after that the same street, the same Chitta Viti, but a new Chitta street starts with the Pratisandhi Chitta, and the difference there is object of the Bhavanga would have been the previous karma, and definitely the Pratisandhi Chitta has the new karma. So that means the object has changed. Normally it doesn't happen in the Bhavanga Chitta. So even Panchadvarika Viti or Manodvarika Viti, when you count the 17 Chittas, there are Bhavanga Chittas also included in it. So I thought why it is included there is probably either it is coming from Chitta Niyama, or I thought it may be due to the Nisaya Pacha, without Taramana.
It's nothing to involve in Nisaya Pacha actually. This is and the Bhavanga Chitta is not a part of the Viti, even though we draw it. Viti chart and the Viti are different. So in the Viti chart we do draw Bhavanga Chitta, we do draw Chuti Chitta, we do draw Patisandhi Chitta, but the Viti ends with the Tadalamana, or Viti ends with the Bhajavana. Viti starts with the Avajjana. So as you said, there is an occasion that the Bhavanga object of the object that strikes the Bhavanga is different, object of the Bhavanga is different. So object of the object of the Bhavanga is always the same object, doesn't change within one life, and the object that strikes at the Bhavanga is completely different, and that object only changes when someone dies and a new life is taken. And there is a one conscious called Agantuka Bhavanga. It is not a Bhavanga actually, it's another Viti consciousness happening. Viti means is a Vipaka consciousness happening in between. We can call it Agantuka Tadalamana or Agantuka Bhavanga, it doesn't matter. So that's another specific chitta that is happening. Other than that, the object of Bhavanga doesn't change at all. The reason is the same karma that gave the rebirth is producing each and every Bhavanga within the entire life.
Thank you very much. I have a third question. May I ask that, because I don't see any hands raised?
I'm just reluctant because they put down the hands. I don't know what was the reason. We can first give them chance. If they don't raise, we can go for the next question.
Okay.
There was an sister. Yeah.
Thank you so much for the lecture today about Bhavanga and Chitta Rūpa during sleep. My question is, we have the same kind of Bhavanga for. So today, class you actually provide us with the Nitta Moksha in Jakarta, right? So my question is actually why the same Bhavanga Chitta, but we have different states or different level of alertness towards the new object. Why is that?
Physicality. Mainly the physicality. Sleep is also based on physical change, biological change. I think you must be knowing better than me actually. When one is in unconscious level, the physical functioning is different than while we are in sleep, at sleep.
So can I say that the capacity of the Bhavanga Chitta to capture, like to look for, to search for the new object is the same, but it is limited or enhanced by the physicality?
Yes, you can say that. The book says unless there is a physical defect or sickness, the bhavanga is always in search of objects. This is the statement in Pali. Bhavanga is always in search of an object because of its manasikara and also because of influence of the past habits and also or so forth. Unless it is in a sleepy or tired or sick state, drowsy state, for instance, if I translate it. So you can say that all the bhavangas have the same quality of searching for an object and it's limited by the physical state. Or otherwise, yeah, that's but because I would say that the entire mind stream is in search of object, that we better to consider it as the entire mind stream. That's why in the previous question also I emphasized on where does the object strikes. Don't think that the object is striking at the bhavanga. Object strikes at the mind process. So it happens that there was a bhavanga at that time. So then it says it strikes at the bhavanga. Sometimes the object strikes at the javana. That's what happens when we wake up from a jhana while due to its sound, because the jhana chitta was happening and it was interrupted by a sound. And where did this sound struck? It struck at the ear, and which consciousness was got affected by it? What was the connection? It's a jhana consciousness. So it shows that the object can strike at the javana chitta as well. So object can strike at any chitta. And it's constantly struck. Like for example, while I'm talking, obviously my objects are different, but at the same time I'm sitting on something, I'm leaning to something. So physically my body conscious, kaya pasada is constant contact with some object. And these contacts are influencing the consciousness. But though they are not strong enough to drag the attention. So, but suddenly if in this chair, if there is someone put a throne on it, then what happened? I will suddenly get a jerk because that was too strong enough to get my attention. The consciousness was able to go into that way. So constantly objects are struck in the mind stream. In the same way, the mind stream itself is in search of objects. Venerable Lady Sayadaw says, even the javana process is in search of new objects, and that's why that's very clearly seen when someone, a beginner in meditation, he starts to focus on the kasina or the anapana object, but the mind keeps on going into other objects, and the person feels like the mind is not very focused on it. Object itself is the anapa breath, but it's been dragged. There's some kind of a force towards another object, and this very obviously seen in Vicikicca Chitta. Vicikicca Chitta has one object, but its urge to go for another opposite object is not subdued. So what happens is, when you have the Vicikicca Chitta is constantly arising. The person starts from yes, no, it keeps on going here and there. Doubt. So therefore, the urge is found in every consciousness. The mind stream is in urge in order to find objects. But then we can say, as you said, I'm constructing my answer actually, because that was not a question that I have ever thought about. Thank you for raising that. So it seems like the consciousness is constantly in search of these objects. That's why even the bhavanga has a past object. Again and again the mind recurs taking new objects, and it goes into new objects. That's why it's very difficult to stop our thinking, or unless we fix our object in one meditation object, it's also still it's thinking about a new object, one certain object. So as you said, we can say when the mind stream has that fundamental urge to go into objects, Lady Sayadaw say it always likes to be in vivid objects. There's another statement in Paramattha Dipani. It says it vibhutaramane ramati. It always likes to be in a very clear, lucid object. So unless the body is weak, so we can say rather than limiting into the bhavanga stream, the entire mind stream has this urge, and it's been degraded or reduced due to the physical effect. I think that's a proper way to say that.
Yes, thank you, Sadhu. Thank you, Bhante.
Welcome.
May I ask the question
Yes,
now?
yeah, we can make it the last question, yes.
Okay. Actually, just listening to you just now, what came to my mind was you clearly explained the difference between Nirodha Samapatti, Asanya, and the normal living being. Because in those two situations, there's no mind process. As a result of that, no object can come and disturb that. It will never happen. Anyway, that's not my question. My question is about Chittaja Rūpa. Especially what creates the Chittaja Rūpa, the type of Chittaja Rūpa, especially if you come to Vaci Viññatti and Kaya Viññatti, which creates karma. It is the Chetana Chaitasika more than the Chitta itself. I am saying this because I was trying to understand another statement which you made in Vohara Desana. Because when you were explaining Dana, you said prior to the offering, it's a mind process mostly. And then it becomes the physical process when it comes to preparation, even collection of what is necessary, preparation, and finally physically offering to the monks or whoever the recipient. So at that stage, the mind is working on, maybe the object of the mind is different. Object of the mind is to do it carefully and carefully serve the monks, etc. But if you look at the Chitta purely from a Chitta angle, it would be Somanasa Sahagata, Jnana Samprayukta, Asankarika or Sasankarika Chitta. So as a result of that, it can be a very strong karma. So the decision actually, whether it is a Kusala or Akusala, comes with Chetana. So it is the Chetana finally which decides. So in that Vohara Deshana, you said actually prior to the Dana and after the Dana in the mind process, it would be very powerful, but at the moment of offering Dana, it may not be, or I mean that's the understanding I got. If I have understood it incorrectly, please correct me. Please pardon me. So that's how I understood. So today I thought it's the best day to ask that question because we are talking about Chitta Jarupa. Because Kaya Viññatti and Vaci Viññatti we have discussed already.
I'll be doing this in another 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Especially how the karma and the viññatti are related.
Yes.
So shall we bring this question on that day? It's a good question, it's very important, and thank you for raising that question. If I start this now, I feel like I have to give a long answer, and I also have to construct my answer on the way. So shall we do it on that day? Because there's a very special, complete lecture on viññatti and karma between. So how Chetana is involved in this? Exactly the question you are asking. So shall we take it on that day?
Yeah, I'm fine with that because this is such a deep and a broad subject.
Yes.
Once you get interested in it, there's no limits. That's what is happening to me.
Yeah.
Because even while sleeping, I'm sometimes thinking about some of these things.
That's good.
And thank you very much. Much merits to you. And you have been one of the greatest Kalyana Mitras I found in this life. Thank you very much. Merits to you.
So the questions are done. So we'll conclude our lecture. And thank you for listening. And next day we are going to talk a very interesting topic: the activities during sleep. physical, verbal activities done during sleep, and how is karma accumulated. Then we move on to another very important topic, how the activities are done during a non-human possession. Non-human possession. There are a lot of resources in the literature. I'll try my best to make the handout because it's a long handout. I'll try my best by coping my time because yesterday I came at night giving a Dhamma talk in down south actually. So I'll try my best to give a handout because with the handout it will be very useful. How the mind, there are two opinions about ancient teachers which are found in very limited places in sub-commentaries about how the mind processes works during a non-human possession. So before that, next week we are going to talk a very interesting topic, how the activities are governed during sleep and how the karma is accumulated at that time. So may this merit help us to attain our final liberation, gaining more Dhamma knowledge, and may this also helps for the prolongation of the Buddha Sasana. Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, Buddha Sasanang Chirantittatu, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.